Yes, Dr. Rife speaking.
How are you, Doctor?
And I have had the most fantastic experience in all the lifetimes, in all the births and rebirths of worlds and galaxies, and have been taken to a natural desire of humankind of the present planet to understand their very beginning of life of force, a force of which, long before the creation of light, there was this outer shell of total desire. And so in that desire, I see through a clairvoyant microscope the corona of that desire moving into what is light force, something of which I read eons of time ago while in your world, of let there be light, and there was light spawned by the force of this desire, and a continuity of life that moved each identity, or each one, gradually moving toward their ultimate goals and representation of creation, and not limited to an individualistic approach that required in the events of history to begin man in his acceptance of and need for the role of reincarnation. And that reincarnation was required in order for mankind to fulfill his original destiny, an awakening principle to his creativeness and of his oneness to a vast infinitude, far beyond my understanding of yours. We can only say this creation or creative effort is that intense desire that we have within ourselves, a thirst not quenched by what one thinks that one should have in the material solid force of energy, but rather the expansion of desire to see the grandeur and the meaning of life, which is now moving within the periphery of your planet Earth. And here moves a complete return to the understanding of oneness. And this oneness in its originality was never meant to be parasitic. It was never meant to be of one thing feeding off another, and eventually all conditions feeding off one another in order to survive and move the circle of life in its continuity as you know and understand it. Through this microscope of spiritual creation, you see all life is contained in a simple drop of aqua or water. And from that water comes all the forces of that desire that combine everything in all worlds, in all individuals, in all solid or fine energy, the meaning of creation and the expression of desire into the beauty of life, which is granted in your plant and animal kingdoms, and yet never limited by abusing that privilege to know the simple expedient of entering a body of flesh, moving into various worlds and various lifetimes, is only a school, you might say, of play, of entering a solid condition to expiate perhaps the karmic wheel started the billions of years ago by the desire or kernel of life steeping itself in a materiality, and that humanity not finding its way back searches for the ultimate goal of what constitutes truth or justice, compassion, and humility, the fullness of truth, the fullness of what exemplifies the force of God in its actions and deeds and its meanings. When we look beyond the illusion of what we have accepted to learn and experience and attract to ourselves those that have begun the inner fullness of a creative effort of eons of time ago, and like the glue that seem to hold your worlds together, and again refers to the magnetism and attraction of the cellular substance of the physical form. A drop of water gently laid, you might say, upon the outer cloak of what is world and its meaning. And yet this drop of moisture of life of force can be penetrated within the fullness of what is a microscope, or even the drops of water in the celestial force that telescopes can command and yet begin to see, and which will herald a beginning and understanding of new star systems. And yet in all its grandeur, it is that simple drop of water vibrating with life. You might call it the ancient amoeba, the one cell of life, and yet imbued with the powers of vastness that you find in the wind, air, water, and sky. And so, man in his humanity to live in the ways of true balance of life lacks the understanding that every cell within the human anatomy, of which there are billions, are constantly recycling, reincarnating, placing those that die by the activities of which we place upon the mind and the body. Mind being abstract in the brain force. And so, realizing each cell has that consciousness that directs it toward coordinating every movement and every moment and every second of life within the physical form. But that form cannot operate in its dignity of creation when it is short-circuited by the constant demands of life itself, forms of anxiety, forms of depression, forms of limitations to lack the appreciation of speaking to each cell and giving it the love force it deserves, giving it its respect. For again, the meaning of love means the survival of those cells. And I found in my earth life, as I find even the worsening condition of few individuals that can take a moment to appreciate the cells of the liver moving in synchronization with the pancreatic juices of the body, or of the spleen widening its ability to incorporate the fullness of the total endocrine system. So without appreciation of that body, that drop of water, yet that drop containing all things needed to allow a functioning of the human anatomy itself. Thereby, when there is the consistency of feeling, the dread of what you term the death, the sickness and illness of life, the creation of what is known as fear, uncertainty, not carrying within you the dignity, the right that you are in and have accepted a position in the world of your own volition to follow your different trails, and it never ends. For the contentment of humankind lies in recognizing that what is not accomplished in one lifetime can be accomplished in another. And there's always a projection within the creativeness of desire that allows you to see what pathway or direction that you should take within your fulfillment and continuity toward the total spiritual awakening and meaning of your way in creation itself. Again, the body cannot be subjected to the uncertainties, the fears of life, because it interrupts the free flow of the H cell vibrating in its millionth of vibrational expansion. And so as the vibration is changed, so becomes, from that dis-ease of living, the disease of the body, of which does not qualify to become the God force it wants to represent. It is as I view humanity at the present time. The individuals that strangle the force of their selves, for they recognize nor can give each cell its due respect, and that it is an unconscious effort when one recognizes the euphoria or intensity of feeling. And let us not forget, in the clever disguise of nature herself, there is an abundance of cures, not reliefs, but cures within the fragrance you pass on the lilac bush or in the rose. Or the ways of new mown hay, of which in my delight as a child was to inhale that fragrance, which can be used as an aphrodisiac, but still stimulates the reproductive cycles of every cell, not just the ones of which we used in the creation and procreation of life. It is again found in the appreciation of the magnetism and projection of the animal kingdom that cures and heals, the touch of fur in all its various vibrational forms. And that is why animals are formed and given different names, for each is a different vibration of healing and can soothe the ails of mankind that do not have a contentment toward the fullness of their spiritual desire. Now in the flesh, looking through the microscope to seek the cause of terminal diseases, it was my privilege to see beyond the culture placed upon the microscopic plate, sitting for hours and watching beyond the shell of the cell into its activity and what constituted bringing the limitation of the disease into the fullest light of balance for which was needed. Therefore, I had to take journeys with the mystical, with the teachers and masters of Essene groups, of those of the ancient continents long gone as Lemuria and Atlantis, to understand the rejuvenation process of life, and to finally enter into that totality of oneness, beginning desire to see the variation of what was the beginning of all life. And there I found that in that total understanding, that not only this pathway of desire to express and fulfill a creativeness of life, but I saw quite clearly what is the simple meaning and the fulfillment of all life and all atmospheres of life. That all things move only within the spectrum of vibration, that rippling effect that one sees when a stone is cast upon the still waters. And each vibration, of which there are billions and billions, which represent all star systems, all other humanities in other systems, and everything builded upon vibrational influence was the beginning of the body, the human body itself. You might say the amoeba exploded from the force of the origin of moisture or the droplet of water, because all life vibrates from that droplet of water that vibrates throughout creation. The proof lies in that one cannot survive with a moisturizing of the body, the inhaling or the drinking of waters of purity, which no longer exist in your world, but was the imperative that expanded the vibrational force into the body, and therefore that body cleverly vibrating, not by an act of grace, goodwill, or God, but vibrating to have its continuity and live in the same body for as many years or as many centuries as one finds in the pleasure of living, but only in the displeasure and the limitations of life. One accepts the theory of death which does not exist. And death was never included in that droplet of moisture, and it only is a death because accepting same, one becomes a victim of the mortuary and the grave. Again, widening this horizon towards seeing the inheritance of disease man has placed on himself, I saw the outer synchronization of a cell of a healthy design, and it created a hardness or shell of negativity on the cell. And the cell, not being able to moisturize itself, finally turned into a malignancy for which chemicals could not cure, nor shall it ever cure the needs which are now running through your world. It is a recognition that there is a vibration of complete healing for any disease when it is known and understood that vibration alone destroys or rebuilds that cell within the body, the world itself, or in other worlds. For nothing is ever lost once it is placed upon in a creative force of sound. Thus, you'll find experimenting with the different rings of soundings are what constitute a balance within the body itself. Again, I would invite individuals to try different sounds, not only their own nature force, and a great healing of the throat itself, from the lip to the body, can find cures of the throat and the larynx. Because in the process of humming, one sets into motion the primary essence of what is the I am of all life, the Om sound. But branching out toward the greater discovery, I believe, back in 1934 or 35, I'm not certain of time, but here discovering within that clairvoyance of the microscope upon the plate of the disease being watched, that any and all cures can be gotten through the sound of vibration. And yet, within the schools and teachings of medicine, they will incorporate their motto, do no harm. But more harm is done through chemistry and trying to right a body with chemical means, when vibrational influence is what is needed to draw the force of the cell into balance. But then one must further their understanding of changing whatever attitudes, feelings, and thought forms caused the condition to which was inherited upon them by their own follies. Thus, it is wise to pause and to reflect within your own spirit. What is vibration? What does it mean? And for a test, I invite you to take one cell given forth from any of your five senses, and seeing the immediacy of reaction as you place a thought form upon it. For example, is it not wondrous that you can think and send a cell to your foot and command it to move? Isn't it wondrous that a nerve impulse, a stimuli, immediately sets that foot into motion? And any way of life, whether it be of the conditions of which individuals represent by a tragic understanding when they reach beyond the 50th year, they will dry up. Their emotions grow cold. The fire is the desire turned to ash, because man has accepted a defeat, when he realizes he's undefeated, he is potent, he is refreshed and expressed within his bodies, when he can open widely to the grandeur of his command over every cell. And did I not say that every cell is vibrating, and every cell, millions working toward the ultimate good of your being? And is it not so with even the greater means of receptive action of femininity? We find double the amount of cells than what is found within the positive action of masculinity. For here is the receiver and the giver of a continuity of life that once embraced, once expanded to the appreciation of life, draws them to a deeper, intuitive sense and meaning of their being within the fullness of nature herself. Yet nature is but a dewdrop cast upon the breast of creation, and allows each and every one to partake of that nectar, or the constancy of life after life, of moving toward that ultimate goal in a shorter journey than if in the constancy of medical pursuit and the invitations of hospitals and of agonies and pains that try to offset by the poppy of morphine, whereby man finds that he shortens his life, so must return again and again. But my purpose in entering at this specific time period of your planet of humanity is a meaning toward what mankind is awakening toward in his own right. He's seeking alternate routes for his health, for his cures. And gradually there is hope that he'll understand the vibrational frequency of himself, to where in his own understanding that he is in command of his body at all times, or simply as science says, it's mind over matter. And as he can direct and command his body to move into perfection, of which is the breath of moisture within his body, then he can right the conditions of which he's brought upon himself, or that she in her limitations does not find that fulfillment to widen the horizons of her own twofold expression of cellular essence. It comes upon the changing convulsions of your world. It is the disappearance of the physician. For in the vastness of your changing world, its shifting orbital path in the scheme of things, it will reawaken the totality of humanity toward its birthrights and its recognitions. But let there not be a folly that within the convulsions of your earth and atmosphere, that a Savior comes to soothe the hurts for which you suffer. Nor shall there be a voice speak out to chain that which is negativity, or which is popularly believed to be an antichrist. For man must make his own expansion toward his recognition of self, his dignity and purpose of life, which is the ultimate to combine with that creative oneness of all things. And again, if man would but ponder a droplet of water, he will find within it an expansion of understanding that he does not find in the world around him.
May we speak, Dr. Rice?
Certainly.
You gave a wonderful, a wonderful description. Very esoteric. And I wonder, in fact, it was just crossing my mind, what the approach should be for this book other than esoteric. Should we become involved in the everyday type of thinking of the human? What medicine has done, or what doctors have done, or the association, really destroy mankind? You think we should be getting into how to, let's say, undestroy it, to put it back to normalcy, to speak of particular subjects, please?
It is not our purpose to degrade the good intentions of many physicians or healers. It is rather our attention through these lectures that we may use it as a form of direction so that in the events of classes or meeting of individuals, they can ask these questions and receive the most simple answer of understanding. However, being esoteric in the approach of beginning of what is all life can only be said in an esoteric way, because you cannot express infinitude in the language or the meanings of life as you know it in material form.
That was my purpose in bringing that up, to find out if your intentions were to go more so into materialistic type of life.
Only in recognizing how one cures by being his own physician,
exactly,
but using the force of the vibration. Thus, the introductions toward what is this perfect example of health will widen the self-esteem one must need in order to enjoy a continuity of a good health.
Exactly my purpose. So then, if we were to, say, zero in on a particular subject at hand, which could be, let's say, transplants, abortion, things like that, it would be within the principles of what you're trying to do?
We wish to express an understanding of what you term all diseases, so we may give an answer to them and an opportunity for individuals to contribute their fullness of being toward their ultimate picture of health. And this will follow as each discussion of different diseases is brought forward, and of what is needed for and can be had a complete turnaround in what you call the AIDS condition of the world at the present time.
Exactly.
Also, your cancerous conditions and all the various diseases and ills man gives acceptance to. However, within the understanding of AIDS, remember that was man-made, so it must be handled in a condition of vibrational force in order to bring it to a complete halt.
Well, now, let's take AIDS as the first subject. It seems to be the plague on Earth today. In your own thoughts, how would we approach the patient or the public for the prevention of AIDS, number one, and then to the possible cure through through their own abilities, through your method of vibration?
We can use the tones of the musical circle of life, and more will be discussed in that avenue at a later date by men that have been called geniuses of your will. We shall tap the source of the musical tones of life, along with those masters you've been acquainted with, such as Chopin and Beethoven, and bringing them together to go beyond what you have as a diatonic scale to the cosmic scale of creation, and to where a one resounding note can cure 1,000 people within the specific area of one disease of the body. I must leave, but more shall be forthcoming.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much, Doctor.